Hello, welcome guys back to my channel. Today I'm doing something really special for you. I am bringing in one of my very dear friends, Angel, to be the model for really the first makeup transformation, application, anything that I've done since being in quarantine. Speaking of which, you'll notice all of the explaining I'm doing for these makeup steps will be done via voiceover, so that way we're just not having to talk all up in each other's faces so close and banter and spit and all these kind of crazy things. We're keeping that to a bare minimum just so we're as safe as possible. So without further ado, let's get this show started. So I'll be starting off with this Rose Deep Hydration Face Cream from Fresh. And after I apply some to the back of my hand, I'll take a damp beauty blender and apply it onto the face. You'll notice I'll use the same beauty blender throughout this makeup application, only because I want all of the products that I'll be using, regardless of whether it's foundation or concealer or contour or moisturizer in this case, to really settle into the beauty blender and be transferred throughout the remaining layers of product that I put onto the face. For foundation, I'm using the Luminous Silk Foundation from Giorgio Armani. I believe this is in the shade number 8. The shade number had rubbed off on the back of the bottle, so I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. We are going a little darker than her natural skin color, only because I'm trying to achieve a natural tan look. You'll see that I bring the foundation up on the ears and I buff it down the neck, as well as the chest and shoulders, so that way everything is seamless and completely natural looking. I'm concealing with the Kevyn Aucoin Sensual Skin Enhancer in the shade SX04. I'll apply some to the back of my hand, and with a concealer brush, I'm going to start from the inner corners of the eye and work my way on outwards towards the perimeter of the face, and this will give that really lifted effect while also covering any dark circles you have, because when I tell you that this is the most full coverage concealer I've ever used, I promise you it is. If you're looking for a full coverage concealer, this is going to be your best friend. I'll also apply some to the center of the forehead, as well as the corners of the mouth and the cupid's bow, just to highlight those areas. And keep in mind that everyone's face structure is different, right? So although I'm applying concealer to highlight these points in this model's face this way, it may not work for you. So just take everything by a grain of salt that I'm doing, and just know that anything and everything can be adjusted accordingly to what looks best on you. I'm going back in for my damp beauty blender, and I'm really pressing that concealer into the skin and buffing it outwards, so that way we can begin the blending process and really diffusing those hard lines. Now, nothing's going to be perfect. It's all a work in progress, and we still have a lot of work to do after we finish off this concealer. We still have to go in with contour and powders, so don't try to aim for perfection here. Let's just try to get the fundamental groundwork done, and then we'll work on perfecting the little details later on throughout the application. After we have the concealer buffed out, I'm going to take our cream contour. I forgot to include it in the video, but it's the Fenty Beauty cream bronzer in the shade Honey Glaze, and I'm taking that with a smaller blush brush, and I'm using it to stipple that product along the perimeter of the face. Anywhere you would want to bronze up and bring dimension back, that's where I would place the cream contour. The reason I don't draw on the dramatic lines onto the face is because it's such a pain to blend out, and you're never really going to achieve that perfect blend using that method. So with applying it with this kind of brush that's not too dense, it's already allowing me to start the blending process, so that when we do go in with the beauty blender to blend everything out, it's going to make our job 20 times easier. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous using this Fenty product because it's my first time using it, and it could have gone a very different direction, but especially looking at it on camera, I think it's pretty decent. Let me know what you guys think. I think it's a good bronzy color for her. Once we set it with powder, I think that's gonna really give us an idea as to what we're working with. Once we finish up with the cream contour, I'm gonna turn back to my beauty blender and really buff out any of the edges from that cream contour. This is gonna be the last time that I use the beauty blender before I set the face with powder, so it's really important that I perfect everything before we set it into place. Real quick before I set the under eyes, I'll take my beauty blender and buff out any of the creasing that may have happened underneath. Especially when you're using such thick concealer like the one I'm using from Kevyn Aucoin, it's important to do that. And then I'll go in with the setting powder. Today I'll be using the Makeup Forever HD setting powder. I know they have a pressed version of this that I used to use back in the day, but I'm using the loose formula, so it's the loose powder. And I take that with a powder puff and really press it into the under eye. One of my tricks to getting a really smooth under eye finish is to not go straight in with baking when I'm setting the under eye. I set it first with the translucent powder, and then let's say maybe down the road when I'm doing the eye makeup, that's when I'll bake underneath the eyes. To set the rest of the face, I'm using the Anastasia Beverly Hills loose setting powder. This is in the shade Translucent. I know she came out with many different shades of these powders. I just find myself gravitating towards this the most because it works on just about every skin tone. I'm not going overboard with the amount of powder I'm using. I'm just using enough to mattify the face so that when I go in with the bronzer, it's not going to look patchy. Speaking of bronzer, I am using the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Flawless Finish Pressed Powder. This is in the shade 3, which is their darkest shade in the range. I don't think it's a proper bronzer. That's not at least what I think it's intended for, but I like using it as a bronzer for many of my clients, even including myself, because I love the formula of the pressed powder and it has just enough warmth in it to come off as a bronzer. At this point, I'll begin working on the brow. I'm using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Definer in the shade Medium Brown. I like this shade a lot for blondes and platinum blondes because it's not too cool and it's also not too warm in tone. It's just right. And I like this pencil specifically because it allows me to build in the hairs and build up the brow to get it to where I want it to be without starting too harsh and not being able to take away from it. Our model Angel definitely likes a bolder brow to contrast against her hair to give that edgy look. So you're gonna see me build up this brow and get it to just how she likes it. Let me know, guys, if you want me to speed up these videos in the future or if you like it at the pace it's at so you can see pretty much every step of the way. But next, I'm going to go back in with my bronzer or my pressed powder from Charlotte Tilbury, and I'm going to use that in the crease as my transition shade. I like using bronzers a lot in the crease, the same bronzer that I use on the face, just so that way everything remains consistent. Once we have that transition shade placed, I'm using my Huda Beauty Topaz Obsessions eyeshadow palette, and I'm using that really deep brown color in the palette to add some dimension back into the eye by placing that in the outer V. And then once that's done, I'm going to go back to the setting powder we used from Anastasia Beverly Hills, and this is when I'm going to begin the baking process. I'm placing that powder right underneath the eyes just to prevent there from being any fallout from the shadow that I'm about to use. Going back to our eyeshadow palette, I'm using this copper gold color here. It's a shimmer, so it adds a nice little reflect to the eyelid. And then I take a fluffy brush and brush off any of the fallout. It's really common to happen, especially when you have a formula that has shimmer in it. There's bound to be fallout, but that's why we place the powder there to begin with. And with the Charlotte Tilbury pressed powder, I'm going back in to add that transition shade underneath the eye. And then on top of that, going in with the Huda Beauty brown eyeshadow just to open up the eye and give it some more dimension. Next, I'm using my Inglot gel liner in the shade 77. If you guys are out in the market for a new liner that's gel, that's smooth, that's pitch black and doesn't budge or move, this is the one for you. I've been using this forever now and it's so reliable and dependable because especially when I use it in the waterline, I know it's not gonna move throughout the day. This is definitely my go-to gel liner. Once I have the shape that I want with that liner, I'll then take a very precise detail blending brush and barely just blend out the edges of that liner. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna give us that very effortless smoked out wing line effect. For lashes, I'm using Tatti lashes in style TL9. I like this lash a lot because it's a softer lash, it's wispier, it's more natural looking, which I prefer, especially for this softer glam we're doing. You'll see here in a second that when I apply the lash, I lift up the outer corner as it dries, and that will help us with giving the eyes a more lifted look. For blush, I'm using a shade called Very Graceful from KKW Beauty. I apply this to the apples of the cheeks and then I diffuse it outwards. And I'll even bring it underneath the eyes a bit just to give it that youthful, healthy look. To bring some life back into the skin, I'm going in with Ofra's highlighter in the shade Soho. And I'm popping that onto the high points of the cheeks with a blending brush. I'm not building this up to be super blinding. I want it to remain soft because I don't want to accentuate the pores or the texture of the skin, especially since we're filming in HD. And then I'll pop a little bit onto the center of the nose and the Cupid's bow and chin. For the bottom lashes, I'm using the Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara. I know this is really popular and for good reason. It really builds up lashes really beautifully. I like a dramatic bottom lash, so I'll build this up to create that spider-like twiggy effect. For the top lashes, once the glue has dried down, you see here that I have my thumb placed on top of the lashes, so that way I can really press that mascara into her natural lash to seal any gap that there might be from the strip lash and her natural lashes. With my KKW Beauty lip liner in the shade Beauty Icon, I'm going to start placing this product on the outer corner of the mouth and working my way on up to the Cupid's bow and then back down to the other corner. I'm not really so much focused on overlining the lip as I am the actual placement of the product. I'm really focusing on keeping this product on the outer corners of the mouth so that when I place a lighter nude color in the center of the lips, we're achieving that multi-dimensional lip color that we're looking for. And as you saw there, I'm using Laura Mercier's cream lipstick in the shade Rose Claire to bring some color and life back to the center of the lips. I'm then using Lorac's lip gloss in the shade Buff to give a beautiful shine to the lips. I don't know about you, but I love a glossy lip. I would pick a glossy lip over a matte lip any day of the week. And I love their lip glosses because they're really sheer and they add that high lacquer shine that I love. And finally, for the last step, we're using the Urban Decay All Nighter Setting Spray to set the makeup. And just in case you forgot, we went from this and this and turned her into a princess. And there we have it, kids. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and comment down below what kind of looks you'd want to see. And until then, I will see you next time.